Hey, this is Todd. You may have seen that recently there was yet another in the long line of discussions slash kerfuffles between the dice fudgers and the dice no fudgers. It almost doesn't matter which specific incident I'm talking about, because if you missed the one I am specifically referencing, don't worry, there'll be another one along shortly. The main reason I'm making this video is not to get into whether the fudging perspective is right or wrong. I've covered some different takes of mine on fudging in other videos. You can check those out. I will say, just for context's sake, I tend to not be a dice fudger for various reasons, and I've probably discussed those reasons in some of those same videos, and probably in other videos and streams in which that topic has come up. What I'm here to say is that I'm basically tired of GMs talking about fudging dice, or even talking about not fudging dice. What I want is to hear from players. GMs will talk about not fudging dice and all the things that enables players to enjoy. By the same token, GMs who fudge dice will talk about all the wonderful moments that have been enabled by them fudging dice. What really doesn't get exposed much is the point of view of the players in these games. It probably goes without saying that most players, I would bet, think that they are playing in essentially non-fudging circumstances. So from the standpoint of not fudging, we probably hear from players all the time. That's probably the default point of view for most players, is they're playing in a game that is straight up. I don't know this to be true. I am making a bit of an assumption there. But still, I think it's safe to say that anytime players are talking about whatever's going on in their game, good, bad, or ugly, especially when it comes to the GM, they're probably assuming that the GM is playing straight with the dice. Or if they are fudging, that they're fudging in particularly anti-player ways. You know, monsters that won't die, spells that mysteriously fail, those sorts of very frustrating fudging circumstances. Often when we see fudging being given in a positive light, it's in the player enabling category, such as, I believe the example that came up in this latest discussion, I will end an encounter when a particular player does something amazing. Okay, great, that sounds awesome, right? Oh, a player does something cool, and we're going to say, hey, yeah, that did it, right? No need to go on to another round. That was just amazing. We want to end it on a cool note. Okay, sounds great. But this is from the GM perspective. Do their players know that the GM decided to subjectively call it an encounter? We don't hear from the players. So I don't want to hear about GMs talking about it anymore, because, frankly, our point of view is skewed. We're looking at it from what we're seeing, from behind the screens, how we feel about it. And that's great. You may think you are doing this, and you might be. I don't want to make it sound like I disbelieve you, but at the same time, we're hearing from the person who is making the call, telling us how great the call was. What I want to hear from is players. When you're playing in these games, do you feel also that it's amazing? And the players of whichever that GM was that said, oh yeah, I end the encounter when something cool happens, as a player in that game, did you think that was the right call? Did you think that was cool? Did you think that was absolutely what should have been done? I would also want to hear from players is your GM open about fudging? One of my big issues, I think, is the fact that it's not something that is publicized as a table rule or table decision. I have not seen or heard a GM say to the table, hey, here's how my game plays. We are going to be high fantasy, I give out inspiration, I believe in rule of cool, you're allowed to play anything, and oh, by the way, I am also going to fudge dice now and again for narrative reasons. You don't usually hear that come up in session 0. Please, if I'm wrong, and I don't pretend to be, I'm not omniscient, I haven't been everywhere, I haven't listened in on every session 0, every campaign or table rule setup. So please let me know if that's not the case and that GMs do that, but I want to hear from players who've sat down at a table, whether it's a virtual table online or whether it's a table in person, and their GMs have said, hey, I fudge the dice. I'm going to fudge it for you when I think it's a cool moment. I might fudge it for my creatures when I feel like it's not enough of a cool moment, or when the encounter is supposed to be more difficult and you guys are blowing through it. Keep in mind, I might fudge it that way, and when you guys do something cool, I'm going to fudge it another way, or I'm going to do one of those and not the other, whatever it is. I want to hear from the players on this. I want to hear, one, are you aware that your DM fudges? And I presume if you're still playing in their game, that you're on board with it. And 2, how do you feel about it when these situations have come up? Has it been something that you knew because of prior discussions, that something that you discovered after a session, after a campaign? Is it something that the GMs just said after the game, hey, that was an awesome encounter. By the way, I did fudge the dice there. I hope you guys are okay with it. And you as players are like, yeah, we're fine with it because we believe in that narrative moment. I really want to hear from players because just listening to the GMs talking about it, it's like the chef talking about how great a meal they cooked, but you don't hear from the actual people who ate the meal whether it actually was good. So I want to hear from players. I don't need to hear stories from GMs anymore. I've heard enough stories. I've heard enough people on both sides of the fudging aisle talk about, hey, it's great, hey, it's not great. I want to hear from players. So if you have stories, good, bad, ugly, and I am certainly willing and I'm open to hearing from both sides of the fence. I'm not just looking for people with fudging gripes. If there are great stories of fudging experiences from the player side, I'd love to hear them. And I'd also like to know, how did the GMs broach the fudging subject? Were they open about it? Was it something you just figured out later? How did that go? And so that's really the perspective I want to hear on that. Hopefully I'll get some great feedback. And so if I do get some great feedback, maybe I can have a follow-up to this where I can talk about what I've discovered. And the GMs, save it, right? At least these ears are closed on that matter until we can really get some really new perspective or ideas. I think it just ends up being one of those things where GMs like to toot their own horn for this, that, and the other, and fudging on the side of people who love to fudge will come up with all the amazing things they did. And of course, non-fudgers will talk about all the amazing things that happened because they did not fudge. I've heard all that before. Don't need to hear it anymore. Players, talk to me. Everyone, game on. Talk to you later. Ciao.